Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, how to get ahead in the new tax year. February and March is always a bit of an odd time in tax. You've just had that euphoria of another adrenaline-fueled January. I think everyone assumes you take the whole of February off on holiday and then spend most of March crafting bespoke information request letters ready for the fun to start all over again on April the 6th. Well, in my practice, once we'd kind of caught up on all the jobs and meetings and things that we'd postponed in December and January, we'd get round a table and work out how to make this tax year a little bit better than the last, and maybe even get all our tax returns done by Christmas. So in this webinar, we're going to share some of the hints, tips, best practice, and maybe uncover some areas of the software that you haven't used before. I would say if you're a long-term CCH Central user, and I can see that on the attendee list we've got quite a mix of people that we've worked with for a long time. We've got some new practices and some people completely new to the software on there. Some of it will be very familiar. Other bits perhaps you're aware of, but maybe you haven't implemented them in your practice. So now might be a good time of year to think whether you want to try some of these other areas out for the forthcoming tax year. So who've we got today? Well, my name's Dean Shepherd. I'm responsible for our compliance products here at Wolters Kluwer. And joining me today is Nick Moss. He's one of our product specialists from our pre-sales team. I'm sure many of you will have met Nick before. He's a regular fixture at any events that we run, so that he can demonstrate the full power of the CCH integrated suite. Some of the things we're going to be sharing today, obviously this is very tax focused, so we're going to start off by looking at the information request process. What have we got in the software that can help you get that information in from your clients quickly, easily, and in a format that you can get into the tax returns nice and easily. We're going to look at some areas within personal tax that can help you do the grunt work a bit better. You've got the tax return information in there. How can you navigate around personal tax and get to where you want to go and make sure you've got all the information that you need in there. We're going to take a look at CCH return review. So I know in my practice, I used to have a poster up on the wall of Gordon Ramsay with a little speech bubble saying, "Keep your mistakes in the kitchen," which is something that resonated with me because everybody's going to make mistakes, particularly at the busiest times of the year for tax preparation. But how can we make sure that those mistakes get identified, corrected, and don't go out to clients? So we're going to take a look at something that we can help with there. Tax return bundle. I don't know how many people on the call already use tax return bundle and the transmittal letter feature or are aware of it, but it's one of my favorite parts of personal tax. It's a real time saver. It takes a little bit of setup, but once you've got it going, it's a huge efficiency saving piece of functionality that we've got in personal tax. So I look forward to sharing that one with you. And finally, we're going to take a little bit of a look at central workflow and workflows, how to manage progress of the work through your practice, and a tiny bit on task permissions, who can do what within the software. So Nick's going to take over from me with most of the demonstration side of things. I'll be keeping my eye on the question box. So if anybody's got any questions as we go through, then do just use that question box on your screen, fire them through, and we'll try and cover those off as we go. We'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions as well. So if we don't manage to get through them all as we're covering each piece, then we'll try and pick up on any at the end. If we do run out, we've got an hour set aside, but if we do run out of time, then I'll make sure that I'll get answers back to you on any questions that we aren't able to cover in the session. So I'll hand over to Nick and we can take a look at the first piece we've got for you today on streamlining the tax return information request process.
Thanks, Dean. Hi everyone. Obviously, we'll try and keep this relatively short, just on the basis that obviously you've got chargeable time to get back to. And the first element we're going to look at is the streamlining the tax return information request process. So effectively replacing what you've probably done a few years ago in terms of the aide-memoire process. So I'm just going to jump into the software. I've got a few home pages here set up for my CCH system in terms of tasks and appointments and some practice management ones on the right hand side. But what we're going to look at first is how you would go about sending out an information request out to either one client or out to as many clients as you want to in the entire system. So the first thing that I'm actually going to go to is my client profile page, or the extra field, for the reason that what I've got for my clients is a extra field set up called the preferred method of contact. So if I go to my extra field or profile tab, as I've renamed it, one of them is the preferred method of contact. Now in here, you can set this up for your entire database and have a field filled in as mandatory, which allows you to see in which way your clients would like to receive all their information from yourselves. I've got three options there in terms of email, post, and then portal, which we've replaced with OneClick over the last couple of years. This is just really important that you can then filter your clients based on the way in which they want to receive the information. So once you've got that information filled in, you could go back to your Find Client screen and you could perform a search which says, show me all the clients using the advanced facility in here, where the preferred method of contact is email. Click apply and it will show you all the people in the database in terms of I've got 49 clients that want to receive their email, their correspondence from you via email. You can do this obviously the same via post and via portal, and it just means when you run your information requests, their client is going to receive it in the way in which they want to. Okay. So if I find my client that I want to send the information to, in this instance, I'm going to do a particular one to a client called John Bain. I would tick the box of the client, or numerous clients if you want to send it to all those ones we saw previously, select the box at the top. And then at the top, we've got a mail email merge function. So make sure you select that magic wand, not the billing wizard or bulk update ones. So mail email merge, this is where you would then decide what do you want to send to your client, either letter, label, if you want to print those out for other functions, email, and then publish to CCH OneClick. Now I'm going to choose a letter because John Bain will want to receive his information via post. Click letter and go to the next screen. This will show all the different mail merges that you would have as a practice. You can see I've got an overdue payment letter and a payment reminder, but the one which we're going to use today is the CCH information request containing prior year details. Now I select that one. At the top, if I go to edit template at the top, it will open up the template that I've got saved for this mail merge in Microsoft Word. And it'll open it at the bottom. And this is where you could completely customize this template for your practice with practice logos, additional fields, or remove fields that you don't want to have included. And utilizing merge fields from within the central database, you can fill in, for example, here where it says student loan, these mail merges will pull through figures and text from within last year's tax return information that you filled in. And the information request that we've got set up is quite a detailed one that you could use as standard, and this is included in the CCH database that we send out to you. So also, we do provide consultancy and training on this. So if you have got one in there, but you want to customize it, and some of the training videos maybe might not go into enough detail that you need as your practice, we could send someone out to come and set this up with you live on site. So once you've made some changes, either with company logos or additional fields in here, you would select it from the list in here, go to next. And then this screen here details where it's being sent to in terms of the addresses in the system. So every client in your system should have a main address. As standard, that should absolutely be included on there. Now, what you might want to do is if it's for their personal tax information, you might want to send it to their home address if they have one set up and linked to that particular client. If I select the home address and push it to the right-hand side, it will do it in a priority order. So if the client has a home address, it will send it to the home. If it doesn't, it will just send it to the main address that it's connected to. Okay, and you can add as many of these from the left-hand side across to the right. Underneath, this is who it will come from. So I might want my letter coming from the current client partner in terms of who it's addressed from at the bottom. You could have it set up that you want it to be from the manager if that's who your client has more of a day-to-day dealing with. So you could select the manager and send it across to the right-hand side as well. You can reorder these using the arrows on the right-hand side. Now, if I go to next, this is where if you were using any other part of the mail merge function, for example, sending letters out to limited companies, you might want to send it to the director rather than the name of the business. So in that instance, you would choose has director of. Now, because he's sending personal tax information, you would leave this as main, and it works under the same functionality as the previous screen, where you can push it to the right hand side and reorder it based on your preference. But because, as I mentioned, as it's personal tax information, it will just send it to the person's name at the top. Go to next, and this is where you can set the order of which it will be printed out or sent out via email or sent out in the portal process. So because I've only got one, I don't need to worry about reordering them all. So I could just tick the John Bain here on the left hand side, click next, and then this is where I could have various different options of how I want that document to be saved. If any of you use document management, which is fantastic, I think it's a really, really useful part of the system, possibly becoming one of the more mandatory parts of the CCH system, document management now, with all the additional functionality you get with all the different modules. If you wanted to save it into document management automatically, you would have to select multiple documents, because this is how it would open it up into Microsoft Word. At this point, you can also say that you want to send it to the printer automatically as well. So if you've chosen the post option, and you're happy with the with how the mail merge is going to pull through, you tick that box and it will automatically send it to the printer at the same time. Now, if I just choose single document separate pages and click finish, it will open up the Word documents because I had it open at the same time. I'll just go through that process very quickly again. Mail merge letter containing prior year details. Say it's going to the home address if they've got one. Client partner and manager. You can see it takes a matter of seconds once you know the process. Tick the box, go to next, and click finish. It will now open up my information request as a Word document at the bottom, which if I had any information filled out from prior year, it would have filled in the relevant boxes. You can then go and remove any information which has not been included for that particular client. So in terms of the information request, that is how you would go and fill one in, either on a client by client basis, either for 100 clients at a time, or the newest way in which you could use one is via our digital data request app. Now, this isn't going to be perfect for every single one of your clients. It's more for the tech savvy ones, where your client could have an application on their phone of which you could send effectively this document in an e-format for them to fill in on their phone. They could take pictures of subsequent documentation, for example, P60 information, attaching to the questions that you've asked. You then get notified of the answers, you can review them on screen and then send them directly into the tax return, very similar to our digital tax account, which I'll show you later on today. So if you've got any more questions on the information request, any customization facilities that we can do for you, particularly around consultancy and training, if you've got any questions around that, please do ask those in the questions tab and Dean can go through those with you. So yes, thank you very much for the first section of our demonstration.
Thanks for that, Nick. We have had a couple of questions come in, which hopefully you can clear off for us. The first one was about the template itself. I can answer this one. So this was about whether there isn't going to be an updated template with the first release for the next tax year in April. So you may have noticed on screen when Nick went to that mail merge template, it was called 2017 information request letter. That 2017 wasn't referring to the 2017 tax year. That's just the date on that default template. So that came out in 2017. We don't change the default templates every year. It's just if there's been any particular changes or new areas within the tax return itself that we think are useful to be asking for in addition to what we had already. So you can carry on using that existing template if you want to do so. We have added a new field in this year to do with the residence status of your client. So we've had different tax rates for Scottish resident taxpayers. In 1920, there'll also be different rates for Welsh resident taxpayers. So we've got an extra box in there that confirms what their resident status was last year, either Scottish, Welsh, or rest of UK, and then the option for the client to fill in if they feel that their resident status has changed. Otherwise, it's as it was before. Another couple of questions come in. Can the data info request be sent through OneClick? Yes, it can. So you've got a couple of options. I think Nick showed on the screen there the option to send via CCH OneClick. So as Nick demonstrated, there we go, publish to CCH OneClick. So you've got three options there. You can either just generate a letter in Word, like Nick did. I think practices that use the Word option often combine that with CCH document management, save all those documents in bulk to the client's file within document management, and then each person responsible for that particular client can then choose as and when to send that letter out, or tailor it if they know they've got a meeting coming up or there's something else they want to reference in that letter. So that's how the letter one's commonly used. Email, we're seeing a slight reduction in email use. It kind of works in exactly the same way, but rather than generate a Word document, it will send it out to the email address you have on record. Historically, I always sent my information request letters out via email. Since GDPR came in, people are a little less comfortable with what information they do or don't send via email. So if I was still in practice now, I'd be using the send via CCH OneClick option, in which case your client will get an email letting them know that there's a document waiting for them in their CCH OneClick workspace. They can click that link, go in and see that information request securely in the messages and documents section of CCH OneClick, and then you'll also see that in your document center, message center within CCH Central. We've had one more question, Nick, which I think you touched on. How do you tailor the aide-memoire for relevant sources so it doesn't have to be tailored on a client-by-client basis? So I guess how would you go in and change the template?
So in terms of changing the template, you would simply select any client really. If you're just editing the template rather than actually producing the final example, go up to Mail Merge at the top, choose letters from this drop-down list because you want to actually edit the Word document. Go to Next, and then at the top you would select the relevant document you want to edit and go to Edit Template at the top. Rather than Preview Template, choose Edit Template, and that will open up Word at the bottom, of which from in here you can go and make any changes to that Word document that you wanted to. You do have to have the permission to do that, so not every single user in your practice, as you can imagine, you don't want a brand new junior going in and ripping out your templates. You don't want anyone doing that. So you've got to have the task permission available to make those changes. But once you've made those changes, you can save it either over the top of that previous template or save it as a new one. For example, if you wanted to make any changes year on year, effectively what we'd be doing for you for the 2020 tax return. Okay, hopefully that answers that question.
Thanks, Nick. That's quite disparaging of juniors. I often found it's partners that are actually more likely to go in there and start messing up templates, but we can come on to task permissions a little bit later. So next item on the agenda we've got is shortcutting the tax return completion. So Nick's going to take a look at a few little things within personal tax about how it can assist you in getting data in there, comparing data, making sure that you've got everything in that you need. So hand back over to you, Nick.
Yeah, so this really for some, I would say, long-standing users of the system, there are going to be some elements in here that you are aware of, but there will be lots of new starters in your business who these tips could really, really help them produce their tax returns much, much quicker. So please do listen to every point through here, even though if some of them aren't going to be relevant for yourselves. I'll just drop back into my central database and open up my personal tax client, and I'll go to his tax return. I'll open up his tax return period. So the first element is you might want to fill some information in the tax return, but you don't know where to find that information. You're looking down the tax return taskbar down the left-hand side, and it's all alphabetical order, and you think, I know I want to fill in something in particular, but I don't know where it is. You're looking at the calculation on the right-hand side as well, but because you've not got that information filled in, it's not appearing on the calculations. I don't know where it is. Now, I've never filled in a paper tax return myself, but a lot of the people who I worked in with practice, just that was their way of knowing where all the boxes were. We have the facility to click View Tax Return at the top. Now, this will open a physical tax return live on screen, of which you could then find the relevant box that you're trying to fill in. For example, this one here, if you've received a notification for the student loans company that repayment or income contingent student loan, if I was to wanted to put a cross in that box, but I don't know where to fill it in elsewhere in the database, I can just double click on that box and it will take me to the place where I can fill in that various information. So historically, people absolutely love the function that you can go into the View Tax Return function at the top and fill in it via that screen if they're struggling where to fill that box in. And it's also worth noting that that functionality is also available in the corporation tax module if any of your staff use that module in Central as well. Another function that people really like to use is the fact that you can switch between years. So in here I'm in 2017-18 just because it's the year that I use for demo purposes. But if I wanted to open last year's tax return, I can click the previous year function here. If I click that previous year function, it will open up 2016-17, which I can have them open as side-by-side tabs. Or if I wanted to, right-click and detach that tab and have it as a separate window on a different monitor. So I could have 2017's on one screen, 2018's on the next screen, or again, for more helpful for next year, 2019 on one, 2020 on the next. Again, just helping you be able to compare year on year a bit easier. Okay, just close some of these tabs here. Just close this one and I'll close the other information I've got there. Another way in which people really like to use the system in terms of detaching tabs is having this calculation as a separate tab on one of the screens. So how people would navigate around the system currently if they don't know that function is they could either go to employment on the left hand side and change the information, or they could go to the figure on the right hand side and click the information there and change it and watch it change live once they come out of that screen. But if you've got two screens, which I imagine a lot of you have on the webinar currently, if you click the preview button, it will open the tax calculation in its own tab across the top of the system. If I right click and detach that, same as what I did for the prior year, you could have the tax calculation on your other window. And if I start changing information in here, you can see it changes it live on screen. So rather than having to come out and refresh it and watch changes be made, you can change it live at this point in time. Okay, so that is a really popular part of using the tax return function. Have the preview open and change it as you go through. Now, one of the most recent changes to personal tax was the inclusion of the digital tax account pull through from OneClick. So historically, you will have had this crown at the top, and if you click that and you don't have OneClick, what you would get is a PDF copy of what HMRC have on your client, of which you would then have to go through and manually type that into the relevant areas of the tax return. So what I've got is a link through to HMRC's digital tax account. And if you're an existing CCH user and don't have OneClick, you should have this feature. I would say for a firm of any size, whether it's one user, where it's 1,000 users, having access to your client's digital tax account is almost a mandatory part of CCH now. Because if I go into 2017-18 here, what it will do is it will show me all the information which HMRC has in your client, similar to what that PDF had previously. But I can choose which information gets directly populated straight into the personal tax field. Rather than having to retype it and put it in the correct boxes, it will pull it through straight into personal tax. Now, you will see there are some errors in this instance in telling not authorized access data for this UTR because the 64.8 doesn't exist. Now, that's because John Bain is not a real person. Okay, he's a figment of my imagination that I use for demonstration purposes using the HMRC sandbox environment. Now, what we see, this information on the left is what HMRC would have on my client, and on the right is what's currently in personal tax, so you can compare it side by side. So you can see I've got some P60 information through there, and then some employment benefits from their P11D. I've got marriage allowance information, I've got national insurance contributions, pensions and retirement annuities, state benefit pensions, and then tax refunds. So all that information, you'd either have to ring up HMRC individually beforehand, it would be on your information request. It just takes time to get all that information to them. What you could do is you could tick each individual box and say, I want to include that in the tax return with the tick boxes we've got there. Or right at the top, there is the function to be able to tick that one there, use all sections in the tax return, of which it would automatically tick all the relevant fields, and in the bottom right hand corner you've got send to tax return. Click that button, all this information that we saw on the left hand side would populate into the relevant boxes that we've got in CCH Personal Tax. So really every single site should be using the digital tax account link that we've got there in Personal Tax. And in terms of time saving, it's absolutely enormous, and you would get that for every single one of your personal tax clients that you have a 64-8 for, which I expect will be all of them anyway. It will be linked to your HMRC agent already because of that 64-8. So once you get OneClick's digital tax account set up, you have access to that for every single one of your clients, and the cost for that is incredibly small. If you're already a CCH user and you don't have that, I suggest that you should be dropping an email to your account manager immediately, because the cost for it is almost laughable how small it is for your entire CCH personal tax database. So yeah, in terms of how you would go about filling in information into your tax return, a lot quicker. You've got the view tax return feature in the top left hand corner. Flicking between years, much easier in the previous year function. Having the preview open as a separate tab on a different screen, so as you're typing it in live, it changes it automatically on your computation, and then using the digital tax account function. So if you're using all 4 of those functions already, fantastic. It's great to hear that you're using the system to its full potential in terms of filling in information automatically. But again, please push this down to some of the newer members of staff, whether that's juniors or you've got new seniors that have come across from other practices that have never used the software before, just to keep the speed and efficiency of using the software to its full potential. Okay, so that's just some very quick shortcuts in terms of helping you fill in some information in the tax return as quick as possible. So hand back to Dean and see if we've got any more questions about filling in the information in the tax return.
Great, thanks, Nick. We've had one question about the digital tax account, which I can cover off, and that is, when is the information available within digital tax account, and is there going to be any more information available this year than has been in previous years? So those of you that have been using the digital tax account for the couple of years now that HMRC have had it available will know that information being made available by HMRC has been a little bit sporadic. They go through quite a lengthy process of taking that information out of the kind of really old legacy databases that it's being stored in, moving it over to a nice shiny new database, and then making it available for us to grab for you in the digital tax account. Now, unfortunately, that process seems to take them an awful long time at the moment. So some of the customers we worked with over last year said that information wasn't flowing through for every client until sometime in November. We liaised quite closely with HMRC on this. They said the information should be there by late September, early October each year, but sometimes there's a bit of a delay, and they do also have some issues with the right data going through. So it's not always wholly accurate, and it does take a while to come through, but they are working on a solution. They're working on a completely new set of what we call APIs, which is the method we use to grab this information from HMRC. So as soon as they make those new APIs available to us for use in the software, then we should be able to grab that information much earlier, and it should be more accurate, and there should be more information available than you have now. They haven't given us any kind of time scale for this to be completed. We were hoping that it'd be completed at the end of last year so that we can have it ready in our April release. I think with a lot of HMRC projects being put on the back burner because of Brexit planning. That was one that didn't progress at all last year when we were hoping it would do. So we're really on a bit of a watching remit with HMRC on this one. So I'm not sure when that will be available, but as soon as they open up access to that information, then we'll make the necessary changes in the software to get that out to you. But I think in the meantime, it's a very useful time saver, particularly when it gets to the urgent time of year, November, December, January, and well worth grabbing that information, if nothing else, for a double check that your clients haven't forgotten to provide you with some of the information, or perhaps what they've provided with you with doesn't match what HMRC hold on your behalf. I know I had a lot of clients that would have little part-time employments or temporary employments that they'd kind of forgotten about by the time we got around to doing the tax return, and hopefully those will all get picked up on the digital tax account. So we've had a couple of more questions come in about the quality of the data, about the pensions information being lumped together. That was one of the areas that they're going to be addressing with that new piece of work they're doing that hasn't progressed as quickly as we would have liked. So for the time being, that pension data is kind of all amalgamated to one, then it's not separated out into the separate pensions. We've had a question: does dragging through from the digital tax account around the figures, i.e. round down the gross salary and round up the tax deducted under PAYE? That's a very good question. I don't know whether you know the answer to that one, Nick?
It does post in pence. So yeah, it does. From my experience, it's never rounded it to the whole pound. It posts it in pence.
I'll double check that one.
Not have ever tried.
Yeah, well, I'll double check that one later and post you an answer on that one, because personal tax would do that kind of rounding. So I have a sneaky feeling it would probably do it from the DTA as well, but we'll double check that one for you. Okay, so that's a few shortcuts for the tax return completion for you. We're now going to look at automating the review of tax returns. So as I mentioned earlier, I was very keen in my practice to make sure that any mistakes stayed within the practice and didn't go out to clients, but it's always difficult, particularly at the busiest times of years when everybody's maxed out with work and you know that you want to be double reviewing everything before it goes out the door, but inevitably you run out of time for doing as diligent a review process as perhaps you would be doing slightly earlier on in the year. So we do have a tool that you can use to help highlight areas of risk across your database of clients to see perhaps where you can focus your efforts in finding out whether there's been any errors or omissions in the tax returns. So I'll hand back to you, Nick, to go over that one.
No problem. So if I drop back into my client's 2017-18 tax return period, if you wanted to review this as a manager or partner, what we have at the top is a return review function with the page with the binoculars on it. Now, if I click that, it will tell me I've got not all data sources are marked complete because I've not completed each section of the file. But if I say yes, what it will do here is list. I've got it grouped together based on the type of information in the tax return, and it will just explain what I've got this year compared to last year and then the variance among that. And what you can have is you can have set variance fields that will give you a warning if they are above or below certain amounts or percentages. So you could have a system in place where if you've got some dividends in last year, you can have a warning set up that if no dividends have been received this year, so you've got a variance of either 100% or above 25%, it can warn the reviewer to check that that information has been filled in correctly. You've also got information on the right-hand side explaining whether it's been reviewed or whether it's been estimated or, again, completed by the staff member. They will be put in at the point of filling the information into the tax return. You also have got review points at the bottom. So you can see I've got a system variance of over 10% here for the income from his employment from E.H. Smith. You can have little notes and references in there for staff members to fill in before it goes to review. So rather than having to note it on a manual file or elsewhere in the database on a working paper schedule, you can put them listed against the actual data points in personal tax. So it will be listed there and be able to save there year on year, so you can compare why the income for this year might be very different from last year. Again, dividend payments you might not receive on this year because the company didn't call dividends. It could be for whatever reason, but you've got information in there to fill in why it's different this year to last year, and you've got history for that. So if your client asks for reasons, if they don't know if they're not particularly tech-savvy client or don't know much about their tax, you've got all the information in there in one place to be able to compare it year on year, and you've got the ability to view a physical report which can show all that information on a nice PDF for your client. I'd be interested to know how many of you actually utilize the CCH return review function. I think it's because it's potentially an additional module. A lot of our long-standing firms don't use this. They would do it manually. There is a small charge again for using this area of the system, but in terms of time saving and having those automated warning functions in there and notes, it could be a huge part of the system that could automate some of your review process for you. Okay, so yeah, please ask any more questions that you've got around the CCH return review process. It's an area which Dean knows pretty well in his time as the product owner for personal tax, just around the fact that when we have national user group meetings, it's sometimes quite a hot topic because a lot of sites aren't actually using it. They're unaware of it, primarily because they've been using the system a long time, and it's something that came in quite under the radar a few years ago, where we're testing it and it went with a soft landing. So again, if you're not using it and you're really interested in wanting to know more and you want a bit more documentation on the CCH return review process, please drop your account manager an email, and they'll send you across all the relevant documentation, including what its full functions are, again, limitations, that's an important point to know as well, and then obviously what the costings are for your practice. So yeah, I'll drop you back to Dean to answer any questions on the tax review function.
Okay, thanks, Nick. We've had a few, I'd say, comments rather than questions. A few questions about or comments about pricing. So this is, I think, the one item we're showing you today where there's an additional cost over and above CCH personal tax for. If you're an existing customer, then do have a chat with your account manager to find out the cost for your practice on that one. We've had a few comments saying looks fabulous. If it was free, we'd absolutely use it. Okay, not everything in life is free, unfortunately. So there is a charge for this one. But yeah, no other questions other than that one. Oh, I have had a question. Any plans for a nice tax working papers app so we can file stuff onto the working papers throughout the year? We do have some plans to do some development on a working paper solution. So at the moment we have working paper management within CCH Central that really supports accounts production. So it allows you to assist in making your practice paperless, so you can get your working papers files out of paper and into CCH accounts production. It was built in such a way that we could then roll that out across the different products. So we could create a tax version of it and a corporation tax version of it. We haven't gone down that route yet because at the moment we're assessing some cloud working papers applications that we're hoping to bring to the UK that have been developed by one of our US Wolters Kluwer's companies. So that's being evaluated at the moment. And of course, as many of you will know, we're also in the process of building out our compliance products in the cloud. So a future cloud personal tax product will have that kind of working papers functionality built in. I would say for most of the people that are on call that have been personal tax customers for quite a while, I think we're probably a little way off having that cloud product available for you to use in earnest, but I'll certainly be keeping you posted throughout the year on progress with that. Okay, so next section, we've got, it's my favorite one, the tax return bundle. So in my practice, we spent an inordinate amount of time once we'd completed all the tax returns, crafting the letters or emails going out to our clients, really summarizing what's in the tax return, what the tax liability is, when the payments are due, all that kind of thing. And I'm slightly ashamed to admit, but I must have had about a 15-page template that for every single client, whoever responsible for that client would tailor that spreadsheet down, delete out the paragraphs that they didn't need, that kind of covered every possible tax payment or liability scenario. So if I had tax return bundle available to me at the time, then I think I would have absolutely loved to implement that across the practice, because it's a huge time saver, and actually reduces the risk of people making errors manually creating these on a client by client basis. So this is one feature that I really think's a great part of CCH Personal Tax. So I'll hand over to you again, Nick.
No problem, thanks, Dean. So yeah, as Dean says, it's also my personal favorite part of personal tax, and to make you all happy, this is actually included for free with personal tax. So as Dean said, some things aren't free. Some of the better bits, like the tax return bundle, that really, if you've got more than 10 staff, you'll see some major time savings in it. Even less than 10 staff, if you just want to automate that process, it will help you so much. So what I'm going to go through is how you would actually produce the bundle, and example of what the output would be. In terms of how you'd actually go about creating it for yourself, there's already been one point made, I think, in the question box, who's gone through the process and absolutely loves the output, but creating it and getting it to its endpoint does take a bit of time and consultancy from yourselves to get to that endpoint. So hopefully what we'll see today is that the endpoint really is worth it in terms of what it will produce for you. Now, what I've got there is an example tax return where they've earned £150,000. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that to show I'm not fixing anything, and I'm going to halve it. I'm going to put it as 75,000, and I'm going to say his pay as you earn is going to be 20,000. Again, I'm by no means up to date with relevant tax amount, so I'm going to put 20,000 in there. And let's suggest that this tax return is ready to go out to the client. As Dean mentioned, he would have a 15-page example template that he would cut down with the relevant information that he wanted to pull through. Now, I expect that yourselves, you've probably got a template, if you're not using the tax return bundle already, that you will fill in information manually on the face of that letter. Now, if you're using document management, you'll already be used to using the mail merge functionality, where it can pull through information from the client's static database in terms of names, addresses, responsibilities, all that type of information. But with the tax return bundle, it can pull through figures from the tax return automatically onto the letter. Now, it's not just information that will populate straight onto a letter. It's smart, using a function called business rules, where it will automatically put certain bits of information on that letter if it's in the tax return, and if it's not in the tax return, it will take it out. For example, if that client has got rental income in the rental income box, it will put a rental income paragraph on the letter for you. For example, it could say, we have included rental income of this amount from this property. If it hasn't got rental income, it just won't put that paragraph on. Again, with non-dom, if it's a non-dom, it'll put the paragraph on. If it's not, it just won't put the paragraph on. So the power of tax return bundle is in the business rules, and it's getting those business rules customized for your practice and the template built up where the real power is. So, but once you've got that and you've set it up for your practice, it will be the same year on year. It will roll forward all the relevant information. It'll include it on the tax return for you. So in terms of seeing what the end product is, all you would have to do is click tax return bundle at the top. And within here, I would have the option to send it as an email, print it, or at the top, publish to one click. And if I'd done that, it would automatically save it in the document management system as well at the same time if you are using DM. Now, to see it, you don't have to see it if you want to send it out, but I would always recommend you just have a look at it first. If I click create bundle, it will produce that template letter for you. Now, mine is a relatively basic one, and we'll have a logo of my practice, which is called Bennett Rowe & Co. on that letter, and it will open it in a PDF document format, of which you can see I've got my company logo and address, and I've got my client's name and address, and it says, "Dear John, I've pleasure in enclosing your 2017-18 tax return for your perusal and approval. Here's your total tax due, 19,800, and there's my 75,000 that I changed it to at the start." Okay, now this is an incredibly basic one where it'll include that figure, but you can build it to include what information from the tax return you like. It's a complete blank canvas of what you want to produce for it. So that's why having a consultant on board and in your office actually building it with you is really, really beneficial. What a lot of firms is they also have a page underneath below that that dictates what the payments on account are and how they would go about paying it with UTR numbers and information like that. Now, it's not just a letter. Underneath it, you would then have the physical tax return and computation as one document, because ordinarily you'd group that together manually yourself and send it out in a bundle of documents yourself. So the system's already managing that process for you. Now you can see that it's exported that as a PDF for me, where I then can't actually go and change that letter. But what a number of firms do is they would have a standard template that will pull through various bits of information on it. But if you wanted to really customize that letter and bespoke it, for example, if you've got a more personal relationship from your client, you might want to say, "I've got I hope you had a nice time in Egypt on holiday," or something like that on it. You can actually tick a box there that says output to Word, and it would output the letter element of that bundle out to Word, where you can go and edit that on a case-by-case basis. You would have also the option to add additional schedules and tax computation down here in terms of a statement of account automatically in the bundle based on your practice preferences, or remove something out on a client-by-client basis. So really, really useful part of the CCH system. And as I mentioned right at the start, it's free for you to start using once you've got the template set up. Now, we do have consultancy available for someone to come out and set up that for you, either on site or over the web, but I do recommend having someone out on site for you, doing it live with you and your staff. Alternatively, we do have a dedicated seminar on the tax return bundle held by our professional service consultants. So it might be worthwhile jumping on that first, having a look at it, see if you can give it a go yourself. But if you want a bit more help, the consultants can come and do that with you on site. So I would say it's possibly the least utilized function of the system that has the greatest added value. And from my time in practice, we use this at my firm, and it really, really just became part of the tax return process that saved so much time. You're probably looking at between 15 minutes and 25 minutes per tax return that you send out, and really any firm that has gone down the route of and put the time in to get that bundle set up has seen the huge benefits that provides for them going forward year on year. So yeah, I'll drop you back to Dean. If any of you got any questions, please put them in the box. I think we've seen a couple come in, so Dean can go through some of those with you.
Great, thanks, Nick. Yeah, again, a mixture of comments and questions. So a few of the comments have come in saying it's a really great bit of kit, but it does require a lot of effort and investment in time to set things up properly. I think that's absolutely right. I think if this was my practice, although we do have guides, you're on webinars on how to do the tax return bundle yourself, or at least the transmittal letter yourself. I think if you really want to get the benefits out of this, then you should be looking to get support from our professional services team to come in and make sure that everything that's being set up is being set up properly, so that you get all those efficiency gains. A number of customers that we've worked with have sent me their templates and examples of the letters that it produces, and some of them are really going beyond what we kind of anticipated for this feature. So we kind of saw it as just a replacement for that manual creating of the letter, and that's how I would have implemented it in my practice. But actually, because it's so editable and customizable, Some practices are doing some really great things in terms of communicating information and sort of translating what that tax return means to their clients, and really increasing the value of what is otherwise just compliance work that needs to be done, really turning into something that's giving valuable information back to the clients. We have been asked about extending the functionality out to cover partnerships and trusts. At the moment, it's just for individuals. It's something I will be looking at. There's quite a lot of extra development required to be able to use it with partnerships and trusts. So we're just focusing on individuals at the moment. But if lots of people want it for partnerships and trusts as well, then I'll certainly see if we can get that on the roadmap. We've had one more question about being able to pull in data about reduced payments on account, and actually on a similar line, we have functionality within our software where we have smart reports that create letters that you can send to remind people about their January and July tax payments. So we've had that in the software for quite some time. We're not going to demonstrate that today, but those letter templates are there, and that will pull up the tax payment information from the database, so you can send those to clients. Now, what we do have coming up on the roadmap is improved functionality to pull all that kind of payment on account and liability information from the central database into central reporting, so that rather than rely on these smart reports that don't actually take into account more unusual circumstances. So if clients have made sort of random payments on account during the year, or HMRC have issued refunds and set those off against payments on accounts, anything like that, our January, July letters don't handle those very well because of where it's pulling the information from, and that's similar for the transmittal letter here. We're doing hopefully doing some work next quarter to make all the necessary fields available in central reporting, so that you'll be able to create transmittal letters, payment on account reminder letters, with literally any of that information from the central database. So that should be resolved very shortly, that one. Okay, and on to the final section, which is going to look at workflows, tracking the flow of work through your practice, knowing where you are across your practice in terms of work being done for your clients, and a very quick overview of task submissions as well. So hand back to you, Nick.
Yep, thanks, Dean. Again, this is a nice one to hear that this is also free with Central. So the thing with workflow is we're going to focus today on the personal tax element, but you can set workflows up for any process internally for your practice, whether that's personal tax, managing that process, accounts production, corporation tax, but then also the non-compliance information. So if you've got a process that you manage taking on new clients and having your anti-money laundering documentation, photo ID, and you want to manage that the process has been completed internally for your practice, absolutely you can have a workflow set up for that, and managing who owns each step. It's becoming more and more common again around that 10 staff area. That's where it becomes much more required, just to have a full practice overview of where the full workload is across against the practice, and also history of who did what step and when. So what I'm going to show you is centered around the personal tax element. Similar to tax return bundle, as I mentioned, it was free, but it might need a little bit of help either from us via support or through consultancy, just to get them set up for you, because they are completely customizable based on what you want the process to be for your practice. Now, if I jump back into my software and go to one of my home pages, what I have is an example personal tax workflow. I've got 5 clients there set up for my personal tax, and you can see I've got some ticks and cogs across the middle of the database. Now, what they are across the top are milestones. So I've got information requested, data received, complete data entry, return reviewed, return to HMRC, year complete. Now, those milestones there will, I expect, perform a very similar job for what it needs to be for your practice. However, you can completely change what those milestones are. I've got 6 there for the one which I've created, but for yourselves, you might want to add another step in or remove one out, change what the headings are. This is where the customization for workflow is incredibly powerful. Where for one firm which I set it up for in Liverpool, they had a 16-step workflow. Now that was potentially for me, I thought that was too many, but they wanted to have completely granular breakdown of where every single tax return was up to in the process. And once you've completed a particular year, it can then roll forward and set up the tax return for next year. You've also got the ability to have a filter on the top left-hand corner. So you said, I'm only interested in, say, the 2020 tax return periods now. I'll show you where they're all up to. Obviously, you've got a nice 3-month window now to get on board with setting your workflows up. We do also run webinars and lots of videos online for setting up workflows. So this one probably slightly different to Tax Return Bundle. I would always advocate giving it a go yourself, setting it up, testing it on 2 or 3 clients before giving us a call in terms of booking in training. A lot of firms have the ability to manage this themselves. So yeah, really give this one a go. Now, in terms of this report here, I would always suggest this is for a manager or partner's views, checking what all the returns up to for the practice, because what you can do is you can right click and have it so it shows dates of when each step was completed. Now mine are all in red because they're all overdue. I would hope that none of yours would be red, they would all be black. And you can also have it that it would then show the employee who completed the step or which employee that the step is owned to at that point in time. So you can see, for example, this one here, I've got to complete the year, and you see Lee Bennett for the Jack Smith one has completed each step going forwards. You can export this report to Excel, so you can pass that around the whole practice. You can group it all together and everyone have a practice-wide view of where they're all up to. So it's a total process management tool where it can automate who receives each step in the process, because it's not linear. It doesn't just go from one step to another. It can go from data received, complete data entry, and then return review. And then when I was in practice, it happened quite a lot. It would go back to complete data entry, back to return review, and then once again back to complete data entry. Made a few errors, hence why I'm no longer in practice. And it would go back, forth, and round that process as many times as needed before it can then go further on. So don't see it as just complete. It can, at some point, if it goes return review, it can sometimes go back right the way to information requested if there's more information missing that needs to go back to the client. So we build these routes and possibilities a bit like a flow chart into the workflow system. So this is what you would use from a reviewer's tool to see what it's up, where all the jobs are up to. But from a day-to-day perspective of seeing where all the jobs are up to, what you would have is a different homepage called the tasks and appointments one, where it would list here across a particular user all the tasks and workflows that are assigned to that particular user, whether it's personal tax, accounts, documents, a client take on one, and it would list here, for example, there's my personal tax one. I've got to complete the year, but I've also got to say review an engagement letter. And to push tasks on from person to person, they would simply click the blue hyperlink and say mark is completed, and it would push it on to the next step. Alternatively, if you had one that had 2 options, for example, this review an engagement letter, I would have the option to approve or send it for redraft. So based on how the workflow has been templated and built in the background, denotes how you push one step onto the next person. Okay, so it's all to do with how you've designed the different steps and processes in the background to allow your workflow to work fluently. How it decides who owns what step is based on the responsibility of each client. So if I go to John Bain, there is a tab called responsibility, and in here you could have tax manager, accounts manager, and then various different team members, and it can automatically assign the relevant user to the relevant step in the workflow, so you don't have to assign it each and every single time and pick someone from a list. It will do it automatically and assign it to the right person. Okay, now for juniors, you might want to have a pick list because it would change year on year. You could have it so that when it needs to go for amendments, you can have a pick list of users who you choose, and it would then assign the relevant step in the workflow to that person. Okay, so workflow, again, it's free. Please do use it and give it a test and assign it to a number of clients. Don't assign it to every single one of your personal tax clients without testing it first, because then you've got to remove it en masse. So please go and have a look at our documentation that we've got on the website for workflow, and really think about using it for not just your compliance processes, but also the non-compliance ones as well, around letters and client take on and client leaving, making sure that you're being GDPR compliant in terms of removing all the data that your practice requires to be deleted to be GDPR compliant. So yeah, please do ask as many questions. I can see they're already flying through for workflow. It's a major part of the system that really every practice should be looking into, as it's free. So yeah, I'll pass you back to Dean to go through those questions. And again, if you need me to go through anything more based on any questions that come through, I can go through those with Dean. So yeah, I'll pass back to Dean.
Great, thanks, Nick. That was really good. I think we're right up against time. So the questions that have come through on workflow, what I'll do is I'll email out everybody with answers to those. Actually, all the questions that have come in today, some we covered up live in the webinar itself. Others we have run out of time for. So what I will do is, when we distribute a copy of the recording to everybody, I'll also distribute a Q&A so everybody can see questions that were asked and the answers to those. So you've got those for the record. I think workflow is such a powerful tool. It probably warrants another webinar on its own right. There's lots of kind of automation that you can do with workflow that we haven't covered today. And I think if there's customers using the old PT legacy workflow and want to move over to central workflow, then now's a good time to do so. We added a few extras in this year to help people looking to make that transition. So people are very keen on the changing the tax return status and that being able to update a workflow. So that's in there now, particularly useful if you're filing anything by paper, R40s, or returns that you're unable to file online. If you just update the tax return status, that can now move on a workflow step, so you don't have to go in and do a manual change to workflow, and vice versa. You can set workflow up to change the tax return status for you as well. Okay, so that's all the main points that we were going to cover off today. If you're looking for support, then obviously existing customers, you know the drill. We've got this support website. You can call us. You can log calls. If you want more training, if you're not aware, we have the learning portal now, where our professional services team go into a bit more in depth on lots of different areas of the suite. So if you haven't taken a look already, go and have a look at my learning portal and see what there is there. If there's any topics there that either aren't covered or don't go into enough detail and you'd like more specific training or support, then you can contact them through that part of the website or email them. The address is on there. I know we've got some people that aren't yet customers or aren't yet users of CCH Personal Tax on the line. So if you are an existing customer, then do have a word with your account manager. If you're completely new to CCH, then do drop us a line on the email or call us. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining. It was great that we had so many people online and lots of questions filing through, and hopefully we'll see many of you on the next one.